you want to make sure that you've got that best impression, your best foot forward right off the jump. So what we like to say about staging a lot is that staging is going to cost less than a home price reduction. If you go live on the MLS and your home isn't staged, and then you take it off and you relist it when it is staged, we don't want to find that you're either delaying time. You don't want to worry about any, if there's carrying costs you have to worry about. There's a lot of parts that kind of speak to it, but staging after the point doesn't do you as much justice as having it all done and in place beforehand. So good tips to start with. I'm going to develop those a little bit more as we move forward. We'll go into the next slide here and show you a little bit of a before and after, kind of get you started on some of those things. So what you're looking at is an entryway space before and then after. So in entries, especially when it's a narrow hallway like this, lighting is so important that you want to make sure that right when people walk into the space, that they're able to really see how light and bright the area is. That might mean that you want to add light if it's like a lamp on a console. But if it's dim in the space, you definitely want to do your due diligence to brighten it. That's the very first experience buyers get when they walk into a room. And then you notice that there's the rug runner and the clutter. And we had these clients remove all of that, which they did, and it looks beautiful in that space now. So just that first space when you first walk in, really clean, inviting, and bright. And then if you look over at the dining room photos, you can see the before and the after pictures there. The before photo has a lot of furniture in it and some things that were not placed ideally throughout the unit. So we did a lot of revamping and shifting things around for these clients to really get a good balance in the dining room. And then as you'll see, we had them hang the artwork back up again, speaking to that point about how art is impactful. Just having that piece on the wall, while it's probably not the perfect size for the space, it has a good lift in look for the photo of the MLS. And that photograph right there with how bright it is and how clean and tidy everything is, it looks really slick. That's exactly what you want your photos to look like. We want to really sell the HGTV idea that everything's perfect. And even though we all know that we live a certain way, staging should look just as beautiful as that photo. So going into the next slide here, we have a couple more staging mistakes to avoid. I'll keep continuing with this, and that's having too much furniture, speaking to that previous photo. So you don't want to overwhelm the picture with too many pieces. Having things in the right place is important. Having everything clearly defined that makes the room useful is important. And showing additional things like how in that dining room space we balanced it with the two cabinets. It shows additional storage as well, and it really balanced the photograph too. So those are all things that are important, but we did remove the excess lighting, the overclutter of the items that were on the table, and then the mismatched chairs. So just to show that point a little bit clearer. You want to address odors. Now, it's not always easy for you to identify odors in your own home, and we know that, but it's taking the time and the due diligence to walk through and make sure that you have attacked anything that could be a problem. Notable spaces are going to be places like the laundry room. A lot of laundry spaces are just going to smell a little bit musty due to the fact that some people have in high-rise buildings stackable washer and dryers, not enough breathing room and spaces. So if you find that you have any spaces in your room, also noting bathrooms have the same ability to have that musty smell, just make sure that you address them before any of the showings start. That's kind of a thing that you can do in terms of timeline, how to weigh out when to do things. Manage the projects that need to get done before you list, before photographs happen, and then things that can happen while you're listed. So not everything has to be 100% ready to go just because the listing is up. If there's little tidbits of things that you can do that just get you prepared to go before people start coming into the home, that's a different level too. So you can really pace out the amount of work that you're trying to do as you're getting ready to list. Another mistake to avoid is poor listing photos. So you really do want to invest in having a professional come in. You want to have the optimal lighting. They want to get the best angle. Those are things that are going to make a really big impact in terms of what people are seeing when they're first looking at your MLS listing. And noting that this year, specifically in 2020, our largest buyer market became millennials, and they are very tech savvy and they really enjoy having the information handed to them. So having your photographs shine is exactly what you need to do. You want to make sure that you're appealing to people, giving them the upfront idea of what the place looks like and allowing them to have that information so that they don't waste anyone's time, yours or theirs, going into any listings. They're not to know staging mistakes to avoid would be cleanliness. You really want to make sure that you've given the white glove treatment to your home before people start coming through it. Prospective buyers are going to want to focus on space and not the dust or the dirt. So you want to make sure that just your livable space and how you are using it, wipe those baseboards down. Make sure that the vent in the bathroom has been cleaned. And if you've got a ceiling vent that's been neglected for a couple of years, make sure you take that down and give it a good cleaning, maybe a fresh coat of paint, or replace it if necessary. But just ways to keep the little things throughout the home. Make sure everything's been dusted and taken care of with a fine-tooth comb. We'll look at the next slide here, which has a little bit more examples of before and after from living in a space. You can see with this lower level family room on the left, there was a lot of clutter and there's a lot of kids' accessories and toys. And we understand that people live a certain way, but you want to show your home as if it's just as perfect and ready to go as a hotel room would be. So having removed all of the excess items, really setting that space a little bit more, brightening it made a big impact, adding artwork had a big impact, and it wasn't really too much work as much as it was just making sure that that space was cleaned up and tidy. On the right, you're going to see that we have what is a dual office / bedroom space. And while we had a lot of excess furniture in this room, we also had the clients remove all of the toys and all the kids' accessories, because in a 2-bedroom unit, and this is a good point for people that are listing condos, if you don't have a large amount of rooms to show, specifically in bedrooms, you want to make sure that you're showing those bedrooms in their full use. So while that Murphy bed is great for storage, we did ask that the clients take the Murphy bed down and set it as an actual bedroom, because that shows the use of the room. It actually helps with scaling, and then it's, again, giving it the extra value into the bedroom space there. But with nominal cleaning and tidying up, adding the rug, we really did set that bedroom very nicely. And then we'll go into some general recommendations and things to start doing. So this is a great jumping off point. Please know that with this with the slides that go out with today's email, we will also be sending our general recommendations from Haven and what to do to get your home ready for the market. But it's a very comprehensive list. We're just going to cover some of the basics here. So things to do to start is looking at the place with an objective eye. And if you need to repaint that because your colors are dated or too bold, then go ahead and do that. Again, neutralizing with grays and whites is really on trend right now and helps to open the space up with a nice fresh look. And then take a look at the floors as well. So maybe your floors are dated or damaged. You might have some baseboards or floor tiles that need repair, and just make sure that you're addressing all of that. If you need to go in for a full restain because you've got some areas that need work, make sure you take that project on. You don't want buyers walking through a home and looking at your projects as things that they're going to have to take on. So just neutralizing that for them off the jump and really addressing those parts is going to be very important for people when they walk in and the experience that they feel when they see your space. Then we're going to talk about removing personal items, and this is not just photographs, but anything that has a monogram or any sports affiliation, anything that has religious idols throughout the home. You want to neutralize all of that and really take it out of the space, because buyers need to be able to see themselves living in your home. So just to note that it's definitely of interest that your stuff is there. We want to make sure that when buyers are there that they can see themselves there. So taking out anything that has, again, monograms, names, sports affiliations, and religious connotations, all of those things just could be removed really nicely, and it will still set the space really well. Then we have talking about, again, the children's toys and accessories. This is also going to kind of tie in with pets as well. So kids and pets tend to have a lot of things that stay out a lot, and you want to make sure that you tuck those away very intentionally for your MLS photos and then before showings. It is our recommendation that we would say to keep pets off site during showings. We know it's not 100% achievable all the time, but one of those things to think about in terms of if you have a plan in place of what you can do with your pets for open houses, if you have a place that they can go to with a friend or a family member, or anything else that you can do in terms of keeping their accessories maybe tucked in the garage or someplace quick that you can remove things to. Also, keep your lighting nice, bright, and inviting. You want to make sure that all of your lamps have been turned on. Address lampshades. Make sure that the seam has been turned to the back. And that's also something you should do before your photographs. You don't want to get caught with a little bit of the untouched parts that could have just been polished a little bit better. on, open all the window treatments, and make sure it's as light, bright, and airy in the space as possible before showings. Also before your photos on that as well. Then you want to pay attention as you're walking through the house to anything that shows seasonal decor. So while it's optimal if things sell really quickly, sometimes it can 3 months if is a pretty average timeline for larger houses. So if you have out something that is indicating that it's Halloween and it's showing, pumpkins, you're going to want to take that down. In the event that it's taken a couple of months to get up and getting some traction, you just don't need to draw the attention to the fact of how long it's been listed. That information's on there. It just doesn't need to be drawn to visually with those kind of things. So removing any seasonal decor is also very important. Then a good tip is to make sure that all of your light bulbs are working in at maximum wattage, but also make sure that they're all matching in color, because that gets picked up on in the MLS photo, first of all, but it's also an experience, an external nonverbal experience that buyers feel when they walk through the space, when the lighting color shifts on them as they move room to room. So we'll take a look at our next slide here. And we've got our living room and family room areas. So some tips on how to make your living room spaces shine. Again, storing personal items like the remote controls, magazines, blankets, the stuff that we live with on a daily basis but doesn't look magazine ready. You never see remote control on any polished picture in Home and Garden. So you want to make sure to remove that for your MLS photos too. Again, playing into this idea of the optimal living space. And then edit down and organize contents if you've got bookcases and shelves. By removing the personal items that you have on there, you're probably going to start to find that you've already created some negative space. And we like to use the term negative space at Haven in a couple different rooms. We'll see that in family rooms, kitchens, and bathrooms. But what that means is taking the items that are on those shelves, making a little vignette, stack a couple books, put a candle on it, and then shifting that onto the one side or the other of the bookcase, but leaving the opposite side negative so that you don't have to fill the whole shelf, just as long as you've got a focal point and it shows that it's nice and clean and tidy. So editing down those bookcases will have a big impact because it's also going to start to relieve the clutter. And a really good way to take on these tasks as you're moving through the space is just to keep yourself in the mindset that you're going to be packing to move because you're moving anyway. So just start putting those things in boxes, getting a good head jump on packing up to go, and you're going to find that this is actually going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Other things to do, make sure that your surfaces have been accessorized. One neutral focal point is all that you really need on any surface. So as you can see, the side tables have a focal point, and our coffee table does as well in this photo. And they don't have to be overwhelmed by a lot of things. It can just be like one neutral, and it could be a candle, or it can be, it could have the vase or some kind of greenery is always helpful, whether that's real or fake. Greenery is always helpful in a space to kind of bring a little bit of life in there, and the texture too. And then for the sofas and the chairs, you want to stage those as well. So don't just use the pillows that you've had for the last 5 years that you've been sitting on every day. Make sure you go out and purchase some new full shape pillows that really accent the place and again, that nice polished look on there. One pillows on your sofa, one pillow, it doesn't have a nice impact. And then make sure if you have a table lamp on your side lamp, it's just the table lamp. We don't want to see a clock or anything additional. It just starts to get overcrowded. Let the lamp do all the heavy lifting for you and just keep that nice and vacant on there. A really good tip, and to walk through your entire unit doing this right before you get your photos done or before showings, is to make sure that you removed the visible wires around the equipment. Again, that's just cleaning the space up, taking away some of the chaos that people see, and making the space feel nice and tidy. And we'll take a look at our next slide here. Here's a before and after for the living room. So you can see in this living room space that they had the heavier window treatments, and the wall colors were a little bit, they're nice and neutral, but we wanted to make sure it felt brighter in there. By removing those heavy window treatments, it really opened the space up. And then getting a lighter rug, repositioning the chair, and getting some of those things cleared out of the space, that photo on the right really does shine, and it shows a lot of what we're speaking to in terms of how just taking the time to really walk through and do those finishing touches has a big impact. And then we'll look at our next slide here and talk about kitchen and dining room areas. So for kitchens, you're going to want to clear your countertops and leave a couple of focal points. a really good way to judge where to leave your focal points is about every corner. So if you have next to the stove, next to the refrigerator, and on the kitchen island, those are the 3 best focal points that you have right there. And use those optimally. When we say leave out a focal point, we want to neutralize the experience that everyone has. We all own the block of knives. It's just something we can tuck away, though. We don't need to leave that out. If you have an espresso machine, not something that you need to see on a daily basis. But your tea kettle would be perfect if you left that right on the stove, right? Just sets it nice and formal. That is an actual kitchen appliance that people do like, and it has a nice picture when it gets taken too. So just choosing a few places to do the focal points. Another good tip is to take your cutting board, put a couple things on it, maybe a canister, your salt and pepper shaker, some cookbooks, little things that really aren't very specific like the machines that we use in the kitchen, but a lot more focal points in terms of what we would do to stage for the right look. Make sure that you're taking care of the soap and paper towels and toasters and all those things. Tuck those all away. So just put them in under the counter, make sure that they're cleared off the surfaces, wipe everything down, take everything off of your refrigerator. That's on the refrigerator and on top of the refrigerator. So clear everything off, give it a nice wipe over, make sure that it's nice and shiny, and then make sure that everything in the space has also your dishwasher and all those things, wipe them all down. We even recommend that you would get some of those machines serviced before listing. Again, just taking those projects off the plate from any of the buyers that would happen to experience that they would see that they would need to take on those projects. Really good updates for your kitchen as you're walking through, again, taking that objective eye to your own home. It might be in the budget to paint cabinets. We know that buyers are looking for white cabinets right now, and that's something that we can definitely tackle before listing by just having it painted. However, if it's not in the budget to do so, taking a paint pen is also a good solution. So if there's any nicks or scuffs or marks on there, just taking a wood paint pen and filling those areas in is great, because then it doesn't get caught in the photograph, and it's not as not as apparent to buyers when they're walking through the space either. The added part to that is to update the kitchen hardware, the cabinet hardware. If you've got knobs, updating to handles is going to have a huge impact in the kitchen space. So something, again, very nominal that you can do before getting ready to go on the market that is going to have a good impact on buyers and what they're experiencing in terms of what they're looking for. And with your objective eye, also walk through your kitchen space, looking at the sink and see if it needs to get recaulked around the edges. Wipe your sink out, make sure that there's no dishes in the sink before you leave to go leave before the open house, and just have all of your little accessories and everything tucked under the sink. Take a look at our next slide here and do a little talking about, this is the before and after for the kitchen. So again, as you can see how on the kitchen counter, they've got all the appliances and the cleaning solutions and all the things that we always use. But in the after photo, it's really been cleaned up, and that focal on the island is exactly what you want to see, just neutral and one space set optimally. So we'll take a look at our next slide. And in here, we've got office spaces and some tips and tricks that you can use for your office. So when you're working at a workspace, and mind you that right now with everyone working from home, office spaces are very desirable for buyers. They're looking for where they can put their home office and where they can use that dedicated space in their house to work from home, because everything has shifted now with COVID. So taking that into consideration, showing a workspace is important. And if you don't have one already in your home, if you've got that second, third, or fourth bedroom, consider turning one bedroom into an office. If you only have 2 bedrooms, consider taking the dresser out of the second bedroom and putting a desk in there instead. Whatever you can do to show a workspace is going to have a really good return in terms of what buyers are looking for and their interest of your space. But how to stage it, you're going to want to clear the desk of your personal items and just leave 1 or 2 neutral focal points. And that would be something like the couple of books, maybe a vase or a greenery. It could be your day planner, little things that just you would use on a day-to-day basis on your desk. And then adding a lamp to brighten that space. Again, lighting is super important in terms of the photograph, and also when you're in the space, how it makes it feel more inviting and really sets the mood of and the tone of the room. So adding a table lamp is going to have a good impact. Then you're going to want to minimize the wires on the desk as well and store the little things that are unsightly and don't need to be drawn. We all have a waste cam. We know that there's a need for a shredder and a printer too. But if you can unplug those things and take them out of the photograph and away for the showings, it just shows a little bit cleaner and tidier for buyers again. Take a look at our next one here. So here's a good before and after of the office spaces. So adding art over those desks had a big impact. Again, to our earlier point of not leaving the walls bare, but actually having the art is super helpful. It draws the eye to the right place. It lifts the height of the ceiling, and it really does add color and ambiance to the space. Um, Keeping your mind also open and looking down at the floor, having the rug in there, it softens, it really does create a different mood in the space, and it does have a good impact on that photograph in general. So just again, showing the fruits of the labor that you put in at the end and how that does make a big impact from how we live on the left to how we show on the right. Now moving into bathrooms. So make sure you remove all the personal toiletries in your bathroom. And if there's things that you need on a regular basis, purchase one of those wicker baskets, fabric bins, things that you can put and tuck away under the sink with a lid on top. You don't need buyers, as people are going to want to see their storage space, but as they're looking through the cabinets, you don't need them seeing your personal items. So having a quick way to tuck that away and keep it clean and tidy under the sink is helpful. You don't have to get rid of it out entirely, but just reduce it and make it look tidier. Make sure that you have removed all items off of hooks from the back of the door. If those hooks are over the door hooks, take those down as well. And that kind of plays into two reasons. One, you want to make sure that you're showing the bathroom as clean and tidy as possible and really allowing people to experience what the full scale of the bathroom is without having the towels pushing the door closed behind it when you can't open it all the way. The other thing to that is it's going to allow you to see if you do need to adjust your door hinges, because sometimes over time we know that with doors and having the over the hook on them, it can kind of upset the balance a little bit. And once you take that down, if you walk into the bathroom and the door starts to swing closed behind you when you didn't try to do it, that shows that you need to have the hinges adjusted just so that the door stays and keeps its integrity. Again, a feeling that buyers will feel when they walk through the space. If you walk into a room and the door starts to close behind you, they notice that. So addressing it up front and before they get into space is really important. Then you're going to want to lightly accessorize your countertops. Bathrooms, specifically like in this picture where it's a very neutral palette in there, the greenery is so helpful. It brings a little pop of life in there. It has a touch of color. And bathrooms, they're not always the most exciting spaces, but you really can jazz them up. Like the art that you could look in the mirror and see the tub across from it. Adding art over the tub had an impact in this bathroom too. Then you're going to want to store all the toilet accessories, your garbage can, bath mats, and scales. And you might have noticed that I said to remove the mat in the kitchen, and now I'm saying to do the same in the bathroom here. That actually goes for entry rooms or entryways as well, any door mats that you have. And that's just because when people walk into a space and then they step on something that you use on a regular basis, like a bath mat, it makes them feel a certain way. So you want to neutralize that experience for them, and removing any mats like in the kitchen, bathroom, and entryway helps dramatically so that people don't just have that feeling of stepping on the things that belong to you and in places that are high use, high personal use at that. So removing that is great. Again, walking through the bathroom, taking a look at the bathtubs, the sinks, and the shower. And if anything needs to be resealed or the grout or caulk needs to be addressed, make sure you take that on before showings. And then do a really good deep clean of your bathroom. So pay very close attention to your shower specifically. Shower heads tend to get a lot of rust on them. The hardware does too. These are things that we will overlook over time. We live in the space. We don't see it regularly. But if you give it a really good deep clean, that will help to take care of all of those parts before you have to really worry about buyers walking through. Let's take a look at our next slide here and get you some ideas of some before and after. So again, the bathroom with full livability, we know that there's a lot of personal items in here. We had the clients tuck that away, put it in a basket. We also recommend that you would purchase a white shower curtain if you don't have one, and new white towels. Those towels are not specifically to be used for yourself, but only to be used for showings and photographs. So keep them handy and in the closet ready to go so that when your agent calls and says, hey, I'm going to have a showing today at 4 o'clock, you just take your towels out, cycle in the white towels, everything looks nice and sharp and clean, and you don't have to rush to do it. So a really good tip is just to have pre-purchased those towels that would go on those racks that would show that the bathroom in its perfect, at the highest level for the photograph and also for the showing. In bedrooms, I want to talk about a couple things here. So your rug, your bedding, and your artwork should all complement each other. And this is something that's pretty obvious to say, but it's not always as easy to do. So just make sure that you're choosing a color palette if you're working with color that isn't super dated. And if it is, give it a little refresh. You're going to find that a lot of times that the lighter tone colors can be a lot more appealing to people. So if you stay in those kind of ice cream tones, like the lighter yellows, even pinks and light blues and greens can be great too. Don't be afraid of adding some color, but just make sure that you're working it through the entire room when you do so. So we would recommend that you would purchase new white bedding if you don't have it. It could also be neutral, would be white, cream, gray. Choose any of those, that whatever works best in your room. Keep that in something that's a little bit easier to use than just a full duvet with a duvet color. So duvets can tend to look bumpy, and if you do something along the lines of a coverlet or a quilt or bedspread that's one uniform piece, it's a lot smoother in the photograph. So a little tip and trick is just to make sure that you don't have to go all in on the duvet side. Just make sure that you're picking something that's easy. That piece that you pick for the bedroom, same as the bathroom. Don't use it on a regular basis. You don't need to be sleeping with it every night. Keep it folded up and in the closet. Use the one that you're currently living with, and then right before the showing, switch those two beddings out so that you have the nice crisp bedding ready to go on the bed. And again, very quick and easy way for you to step out the door as well. Good tips also for that are going to be to run to Target or any store that you can run to really quickly and grab those inexpensive bedroom pillows. The full shape ones, not the ones that you've slept on for the last 4 years. So make sure that you have those also ready to go in the closet so you can switch them with the ones that you have out into the closet. And then you've got that nice luxury hotel looking vibe in your photograph. And for the showing when people are walking through the space, a little smoke and mirrors. We're not always living that way, but at least you can present it that way, which is super helpful. And adding accent pillows is important, especially in your master bedroom. So keep in mind as you're moving through the spaces and you're doing these rooms, the master bedroom is the room that the buyer is going to live in. So set that space at the highest level. Keep that as one of the most important places that you're looking at as you're making the adjustments to this space, because that's where your buyer is actually targeting for themselves to be living. So set the bed perfectly, have a couple pillows added on there, have a rug underneath the bed to set it. A good tip is if it's a queen or king bed, a 6x9 or an 8x10 rug is typically the right size to go under those beds. If it's a full or a twin bed, you can go down to 5x8, 5x7, and 4x6 as needed. So just knowing that your rug size is important, and you should be framing about the bottom third of your bed down and around the foot of the bed. That's how your rug placement should go, with it going horizontally, not vertically under the bed. Adding artwork, again, having a nice neutral focal point, noting that your MLS photo is going to be aimed at the bed, at least in one, if not several photos. So having that focal point above the bed is nice and sets the height of the ceiling in terms of what people can see. And then keeping your nightstands nice and clear of everything except for just the lamps, as we mentioned in the living room as well. Last tip for you, and this is like a little trick for people to note in their own personal experience of this, is remove your jewelry and your valuables. It can be stored wherever you want to store it in the house. It doesn't need to be just out in public view. So one of those things to just tuck away right before a showing, and that'll help you get your bedrooms ready. I'll look at our next slide here. Go in on this one and get you a before and after. So you can see with this one, positioning also matters. With the way that they had the bed in terms of how they were using the space, it was pushed up against the window and it felt very dark and heavy again with the valance over the bed. So removing that, shifting the bed to a different position, and then just moving the side tables to follow and cleaning them off with just the simple the table lamp plus the couple of extra accent pillows that they added to the bed, and that bedroom really shined up perfectly for that photograph. We'll move to our next slide here. Let's see. We'll go into some laundry room, utility areas, and closets. So things to do. These are one of the rooms that, again, we mentioned you want to address odors, should you have any. And you can do things to neutralize. It's not advised that you would be adding in an air fragrancer necessarily, but using like your baking soda, or if it's a little bit of a fragrance just before you walk out to make sure that the space has been addressed, and that's fine too. But have your machines serviced and wiped down. Make sure that you've cleaned any of the traps, addressed the, if the knobs or doors are open, make sure everything's been cleaned up and tidied and put away. Don't leave any laundry in the machines. Make sure it's been removed. You just, again, want to show that perfect lifestyle that people are looking for. And I know that we don't live that way, but that's okay. Just make sure that you've done your due diligence to make sure that the space looks at its best. And then if you do have items that are needed on a regular basis, again, a bin or a basket is a great way to keep those things in the space that you need, but also with a very tidy look. I mean, that photograph looks like $1 million, and just with a couple of baskets is what they used to put their things away in that one. If your utility room or closet or laundry room space has room for it, artwork is handy, especially if you've got one of the electric panels in there. So just hanging a piece of art over the electric panel will help to make that fall into the wall and conceal it a little bit more. If you have laundry in the laundry room and it's things like hanging clothes and whatnot, take those down. And if there's dry cleaning bags, remove that from anything that's in the closet. If you've got shoe trays that are out or anything that's out of season in the closet, take all those pieces out. Make sure that for your closet space, you've got your floor clear and your top shelf. And then again, once all the clothes and the extra hangers have been removed, shift the items over to one side or the other, leaving the negative space in the closet as well to show the additional storage that you have available to you. We'll take a look at our next slide here. Get you a little before and after. So you can see just taking out some of those clothes, reworking things. And another good tip, which we'll say that this is something that it's not a must do, but a could do, is organizing your clothes by color and by sleeve length. So starting with sleeveless to cap sleeve, 3/4 length and full length sleeve. And then also organizing all those categories by color, going from white to dark throughout each one of those categories. Again, just has a really nice appeal. Is what people see. They know you're living there. These are your belongings. And that's just a really nice way to keep it nice and organized. We'll move into our last one here, which is general cleaning tips and things that you can do really quickly. This is more so targeted at things that you can do beforehand, but also should be doing right before you walk out the door for your showings. So wipe down all the baseboards and make sure that everything is nice and fresh. Touch up your walls throughout. If you notice that there was a scuff mark that was from when you walked in the other day carrying that box, just take your magic eraser and give it a little buff out. Have your windows cleaned, and that's on the inside and outside if possible, because that does get caught in the photograph a little bit, but it's an experience that people will see when they're in the space, especially once you've opened all those window treatments. It just becomes a little bit more glaring in your face, and so you want to make sure you've addressed the cleanliness of the windows as well. Clean your mirrors, make sure your light switches and outlets have been wiped down. We get fingerprints on those things, so just giving a nice little wipe through as you walk out of the house is an ideal way of handling that. Sinks and faucets, the same thing, giving them a wipe down before you leave. And then this is more of the beforehand stuff, but have your carpets cleaned or replaced. If it's something that can be professionally cleaned out, by all means take that part on and just go ahead and have the professional cleaning. But if you feel like your carpet has seen better days and it needs a revamp, let's get the new carpet installed, because that has a good impact for buyers as well in terms of them not taking on that project from you as they inherit the space. Also things to before you start listing, or things that you can do before all the showings start, is to make sure that you've given the deep cleaning to your appliances, wiping down their knobs and hardware. Take a look at your door frames, cleaning above the door where dust tends to collect that we don't always remember to clean. These are optimal things that, again, taking that objective eye to your own space is really going to have a big impact for people at the long run. Alleviating the odors we've talked about, removing any cobwebs as you're walking through the space if you notice them. Those tend to build up more in closets where we don't see up in the corners as much, so take on those projects too. Go in with a really good deep clean. And your exterior spaces as well. If you need to take a little power washer to the deck or to the front yard, to the patio and the sidewalk, go ahead and do that while you can, so that when people do start to come into the space, they start to see it at its best. And then lastly, the common spaces, and particularly that just is making sure that you've tidied the things that as you're living there, we know that the showings can pop up sometimes. So just go through and clean out all the things that are all the things that we live with that can tend to gather on our floors, as much as things that we can also address that might be hung up on the walls, like coats and stuff like that. Moving into our other slide here, we'll go. For top tips for showing, sorry. So again, keeping these things in mind, you wanna have the lights on, curtains and blinds are opened, and you wanna make sure that you've stored away the everyday things. Keep your keys and coats and remotes, all those things tucked away. Store away the daily use items in the bathroom, and then make sure that your kitchen sinks are cleaned out and everything's been washed down in the kitchen as well. And then our next slide here. Empty your garbage can and recycling. This goes for kitchens and bathrooms. You can remove the garbage cans. Take them out of the space. If you've got the garage available to you where you're putting the pet accessories already and a couple kids' toys, go ahead and take the garbage cans with you too. While we all need them, we just don't need to see them necessarily. So removing them really quickly is a good way to do that, and just putting them tucked out of the way. If you have the heads up that there's going to be a showing, avoid cooking strong scents. Try not to use fragrancers. Flowers, some people can be averse to flowers or allergic to them, so not an optimal thing to use real flowers that are very fragrant. So if you do have those in the home, again, just removing those or storing them for the showing is great. Have your beds all made. Make sure that things are tucked away. If there's anything that's under the bed that's visible, please address that before people start walking through the house. You just don't need them seeing you've had to run over of storage into the things that will go under the bed. And then you want to leave your shower curtains a little bit open so people can take a look inside the shower and see what they have in terms of the finishes of tile, and they're just going to be in general inquisitive to look in those spaces. So leaving your shower curtain open a little bit is a good tip. And lastly, with the removal of those other things, is the pet accessories. So once you kind of followed through with all these tips and tricks, you're really going to find that your space is going to have it's going to shine. It's got a lot of potential. We know that. Placement is important. So keep in mind too, another good thing to focus on is the entrance of the room is most likely going to be one of the photographs. So stand at the doorway and take a look at where that picture is. If your furniture is not greeting you, or if the pieces in the room seemed a little bit off place, tackle that in terms of the photograph. That's going to be the most important point. Once people start looking at their listings, the photograph has to grab them. So you really want that to be where you're focusing a lot of the attention in terms of how the space is going to look. But as you've moved through the house and you've taken on a lot of these challenges, a lot of the things that you might have found along the way are going to all work themselves out rather easily. And again, keeping in mind that anything you're packing up is already going to need to be packed to go. Those are going to be really helpful tips in terms of getting you productive and moving forward too. So those are our tips and tricks, and we appreciate you joining us today for how to get your home staged and ready for the market. We will be emailing out these slides and our general recommendations along with it for everyone that's joined us today, and we hope that we find it useful, and we hope that you have a listing where this will have a really good impact and hopefully bring you the highest return for your investment of your listing. Next week, we do have our next Tuesday at 2. It's going to be shelf styling and accessorizing. So if you're able to join us next week, Tuesday at 2, we will be giving you tips and tricks for how to get creative with your accessories. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great day.